Okay, let's unpack this. I want to start by asking you to do something that might feel a little unusual. I want you to close your eyes just for a moment. And I want you to try and tune a radio in your head.
A mental radio. Okay.
Exactly. Imagine you're spinning that old-fashioned dial. You're hearing that hiss, that shh of white noise between stations.
Right, that crackle.
Yes, that crackle. And through it, you hear snippets of voices, angry voices, maybe confused voices, people just shouting over each other. It's a mess.
It's a cacophony.
It's chaotic. It's static.
Okay, I'm with you. It's the sound of information overload. The modern world, basically.
Right. Now imagine that somewhere in that absolute mess of noise, there is a single, pure tone. A sine wave. It's cutting through all that interference. It's sharp. It's clear. It is totally consistent.
The signal.
The signal. And today, we're going to try and find that signal because the topic we're diving into, it is, and I'm not exaggerating here, it is arguably buried under more static, more cultural noise, and more historical distortion than almost any other subject we've ever covered.
That is a bold claim. I mean, we've covered some noisy subjects.
I stand by it. Because today, we are talking about paradise, specifically the popular, incredibly controversial, and, let's be honest, often caricatured image of the Islamic paradise.
Ah.
Yeah.
Okay, I see where we're going with this. The static is going to be loud.
It's deafening. I want you to just picture it for a second. If I ask the average person on the street, or even the average person in a pew or a prayer hall, to visualize the Islamic heaven, what's the first high-definition image that pops into their head?
Well, if we're being totally honest about the caricature, it's not, fluffy clouds and harps. It's very flesh and blood.
It is. It's earthy. It's incredibly specific. It's a list of perks. We're talking about rivers of wine, rivers of honey, and then inevitably the headline act.
The Virgin.
The Virgins.
72.
72. That number is iconic at this point. It's in movies. It's in stand-up comedy routines. It's in political rhetoric. And tragically, it's a recruiting tool for extremists. It is the image of the afterlife as a kind of cosmic bachelor pad.
A frat house where the keg never kicks and the party never stops.
Exactly. It's a very masculine fantasy.
Exclusively masculine, I'd say. It's an endless line of distinct physical rewards tailored almost entirely for the male appetite, the male gaze.
But here is where we have to pause the simulation, because this is where our deep dive really begins.
Go on.
What if I told you that this entire image, this high-definition 4K picture of a sexualized heaven, is a glitch?
A glitch in what sense?
A massive systemic error. A corruption of the original file. What if the source code, the original text from the 7th century, doesn't actually say that at all? What if what we're looking at is just centuries of static that has completely and utterly overwhelmed the original signal?
That is a massive what if. I mean, you're essentially suggesting that centuries of Islamic tradition, scholars and believers have been reading the map completely upside down.
Not me. That is the central explosive thesis of the book we are covering today. We are looking at a fascinating, fiery, and incredibly dense work by J.R. Ahmed titled Beyond the Virgins, Reclaiming Paradise from the Hadith.
And having read through this stack of papers, I can confirm this is not a light read. It is forensic. Ahmed isn't just offering a sort of, a new agey opinion. He is performing linguistic surgery on the text.
He is. And he's angry. You can feel the heat coming off the pages. He argues that the sexualized heaven is a total fabrication, a virus, to use his terminology, that was uploaded into the religious software by what he calls ancestral worship and a flood of external mythologies.
He's talking about Persian influence, Zoroastrianism, even Hindu myths.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He claims these external myths hijack the entire system. And he raises the stakes even higher. He argues that this isn't just about what happens when you die. He says that these bad translations, this static, creates a literal hell right here on Earth.
The hell of inequality.
Yes. He frames it as this epic battle between the hell of inequality created by the static and the architectural justice of the divine system, the signal.
So, our mission today is to act as the audio engineers. We're going to apply some heavy-duty noise cancellation. We are going to try and separate the signal, which he identifies as the 7th century Quranic text, from the static, the Hadith literature, the cultural echoes, all of it.
And just a heads up for you listening, grab your noise-canceling headphones. This is going to get linguistic, it's going to get historical, and it's going to get explicit. Because the source material, the static he's critiquing, is shockingly explicit.
It really is. When you strip away the euphemisms and the reverent tones, traditional theology gets very graphic, very, very quickly.
So let's dive in. Let's start by tuning into the static itself.
The static. This is the noise that J.R. Ahmed says has drowned out the original message. And when he talks about this noise, he uses a very specific, very aggressive term. He calls it the pornographization of paradise.
That's a jarring word to use in a religious context, I mean.
It is. It's meant to be. But Ahmed argues it's the only word that really fits. He suggests that the mullahs and what he calls the sectarians have become obsessed with two things. First, rituals for a kind of Father Christmas god. You know, do this little ritual, get a treat.
A transactional relationship.
Totally transactional. And second, women.
Specifically women as objects of consumption.
Right. Ahmed's argument is that the Hadith literature, and just for a quick refresher for anyone who might not know, the Hadith are the reports of what the Prophet Muhammad supposedly said or did, collected hundreds of years after his death. He says this literature has introduced a level of graphic sexual detail that simply does not exist in the Quran.
Let's get into the specifics, because I think a lot of people, myself included before reading this, just assume the 72 virgins thing is in the Quran.
Most people do. It's become a cultural factoid. But Ahmed points out a very hard, very verifiable fact. The number 72 appears nowhere in the Quran in relation to rewards in paradise. Not once.
So where does it come from? If it's not in the foundational text, where did this iconic number originate?
It comes from the Hadith. Specifically, a narration collected by a scholar named Tirmidhi, among others. It claims that the smallest reward for the people of heaven, this is the bottom tier, the entry-level package, includes an abode with 80,000 servants and 72 Houri.
Okay, pause. 80,000 servants.
80,000.
Who wants 80,000 servants? I mean, seriously, that sounds like a logistical nightmare. That's not paradise. That's running a multinational corporation. I don't want to manage HR for 80,000 people in the afterlife. The paperwork alone.
It's a very good point. But think about who that kind of promise appeals to. It appeals to a feudal mindset. It appeals to a 7th century warlord or a king who equates power with the sheer volume of their staff. It's about dominion. It's about control.
It's a power fantasy, not a peace fantasy.
Exactly. But let's get to the virgins themselves, because the descriptions in the static go way, way beyond just a number. Ahmed digs up some narrations from a collection called Bukhari, which we should note is considered the gold standard of authenticity in the Sunni tradition, that are honestly baffling.
You're talking about the Marrow Hadith.
The Marrow Hadith, yes.
When I first read this in the notes, I had to read it 3 times. I was convinced it was a typo.
It's not a typo. This is from the collection, Volume 4, Book 54. The narration describes the wives in paradise. It says the believer will have wives from the Houri who are so beautiful, so pure, and so transparent that the marrow of the bones of their legs will be seen through the bones in the flesh.
Okay. Can we just sit with that image for a second?
It's visceral, isn't it?
It's medical. The marrow of the bones of their legs will be seen through the flesh. I'm trying to visualize this as an aesthetic of beauty, and I'm landing somewhere between an X-ray machine and a David Cronenberg body horror movie.
It is a profoundly strange aesthetic, and Ahmed jumps all over this. He asks, quite sarcastically, are we describing pleasant companions or anorexic fashion models?
It's grotesque. I mean, why would I want to see someone's bone marrow? That implies they have no skin or transparent skin. It's alien. It's not human.
But Ahmed argues this is a perfect example of what happens when you have, in his words, diluted Persian influence. See, in pre-Islamic Persian poetry, extreme paleness and thinness were considered the absolute height of beauty. The idea of skin being so delicate it's almost translucent was a common poetic trope.
So it was a metaphor for delicacy.
It started as a metaphor, yes. But Ahmed argues that these storytellers, these narrators of Hadith, took a Persian metaphor for beauty and they literalized it into a divine religious promise. They turned what was meant to be a spiritual companion into a hypersexualized, almost fragile object for visual consumption.
It completely dehumanizes the woman. She isn't a person anymore. She's a glass doll. You can see right through her.
And it doesn't stop at the visual. The source material, the static, it gets into the mechanics.
Oh boy, the mechanics.
The static is obsessed with male performance. Ahmed cites a commentary by Ibn Kathir, who is a giant in the field of Quranic exegesis, where he discusses the capabilities of the men in paradise. He claims men will be given the strength of 100 men.
The strength for what? Lifting weights, building celestial houses.
No, specifically for intercourse. For eating, drinking, and intercourse.
Of course.
And Imam Suyuti, another heavyweight scholar, takes it even further. He explicitly writes about an eternal erection.
He actually puts that in a religious text, the words eternal erection.
The quote is, "The penis of the elected never softens." He says the sensation is so delicious that if you felt it in this world, you'd faint.
I don't even know what to say to that. It sounds like a spam email for some kind of herbal supplement. The penis of the elected never softens.
It really, really does. And Ahmed calls it out with that same energy. He asks, is this the Juma Khutbah, the Friday sermon, or is this the Playboy Mansion? He says this was created by men who couldn't function without Viagra in this life.
It's a scathing critique.
Yeah.
But it raises a really serious philosophical question, doesn't it? If your definition of ultimate reward, the thing you strive for your entire life, is just an orgy that never ends, what does that say about your concept of God?
Exactly. Is God a cosmic pimp? Is the creator of the universe, the architect of space-time and morality, really just waiting to hand you a divine Viagra prescription in a harem? It's a question Ahmed poses relentlessly.
It feels so incredibly reductive.
It is. Ahmed argues that this reduces the divine to the level of a gutter fantasy. It's an appeal to the lowest animal instincts, not the highest human potential. It takes the grand, abstract concept of paradise and drags it right down into the mud of earthly, carnal desire.
And here's the real tragedy of it all. This static isn't just weird or, kind of gross. It has real victims.
The inequality equation.
Right. Because if heaven is a frat party for men, where are the women?
Well, according to this version of the static, they are largely absent from paradise, or worse. There is a very famous Bukhari narration where the prophet allegedly says, I stood at the gate of paradise and saw that the majority of the people who entered it were the poor. Then I stood at the gate of the fire and saw that the majority of those who entered it were women.
So just to be clear, men get the 72 transparent virgins, and women, the majority of them, get hellfire.
In this narrative framework, yes, that's the implication. And Ahmed points out the deep, cynical cruelty of this. He quotes a common reassurance given to women in these traditional circles. When a pious woman asks, what about me? Why does my husband get all these new wives and I get nothing?
What's the standard answer?
The standard answer is usually something like, don't worry, in heaven you will be the queen of all the wives and Allah will remove your jealousy.
That is so incredibly messed up. We're going to treat you like a second-class citizen, surround your husband with supermodels, but don't worry, we'll perform a celestial lobotomy on you so you don't mind.
It's cosmic gaslighting. It's telling a woman that her natural feelings of dignity, self-worth, and exclusivity are a flaw, a spiritual disease that God needs to surgically remove from her personality.
And there's one more story Ahmed cites that, for me, it was heartbreaking. The story of the old woman.
This one really hurts.
An old woman comes to the prophet in this story and asks, will I go to paradise? And the prophet allegedly replies, no, old women cannot enter Jannah.
Just imagine hearing that. You've lived a pious life, you're elderly, you're looking for comfort at the end of your days, and you're been told, sorry, no vacancy for old ladies.
Naturally, she starts crying.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and this is treated as a kind of lighthearted joke in the tradition, the prophet says, no, don't cry. You won't enter as an old woman. You will be remade into a young virgin.
And you see the problem there, right? The poison in the punchline.
Of course. Her value is entirely 100% dependent on her sexual viability for a man. She cannot enter paradise as a wise, beloved grandmother. Her experience, her wrinkles, her history, all that has to be deleted. She has to be rebooted into a sexual object to be deemed worthy of heaven.
This is what Ahmed calls hell on earth. Because these books don't just stay on the shelf. This theology filters down into the culture. It creates a society where women are viewed as defectives, as temptations, as objects to be managed. If God himself treats women as accessories for male pleasure, how can a human court or a human husband be expected to treat them as equals?
It validates misogyny by stamping it with a divine approval seal.
Precisely. It becomes doctrine.
So, that is the static. It is loud. It is deeply misogynistic. It is obsessed with sex. And honestly, it's just depressing.
It is a bleak picture.
But Ahmed says, don't panic. Because none of that, not the marrow, not the eternal erection, not the gender inequality, is in the code.
Right. It's time to reboot the system and look at the source file.
The hard drive.
Let's put on the linguistic gloves. We are going to do some archaeology now on the 7th century Arabic text. We are going to the Quran itself.
And we have to start with the word that started it all. The Houri.
The famous Houri. Or technically the term is Hur'in.
Whenever you hear about Islam in the West, this word comes up. It's almost always translated as virgins or dark-eyed maidens. But Ahmed breaks down the etymology, and it tells a very, very different story.
He explains that the word hur is a plural. And crucially, it is the plural of both the masculine word ahar and the feminine word hara.
Wait a second. So the word itself is grammatically gender neutral.
Grammatically, yes. It can apply to both sexes. And the root meaning has absolutely nothing to do with virginity. It has nothing to do with hymens or sexual purity in that sense.
So what does it mean? What is the root actually describing?
It refers to the eyes, specifically intense whiteness of the eyeballs and lustrous black of the pupils.
So high contrast eyes. That's it.
That's the literal meaning. Ahmed translates the phrase as companions pure, most beautiful of eye.
Okay, so why the focus on eyes? If it's not about describing a sexy body, why are we talking about eyeballs? What's the significance?
Well, think about the phrase, the eyes are the window to the soul. Ahmed argues that the emphasis on eyes signifies clarity, vision, insight. These aren't sex dolls with pretty eyes. These are beings that see you. Beings that you can see clearly in return. It's about a clear, unclouded connection.
So it implies a relationship, a connection.
Exactly. It implies a match, a soulmate. Ahmed argues that for every single believer, man or woman, the promise is one of companionship. Not a harem of subordinates, but a partnership of equals. Someone who is intellectually and spiritually compatible with you.
That completely flips the script. The guy waiting for his 72 supermodels is actually just waiting for a really intense, understanding conversation partner.
Or a partner who truly gets him, which, if we're being honest, is a much deeper and more universal human need than just the volume of sexual encounters.
No question.
Yeah.
But what about the other physical descriptions? Because the critics will immediately say, okay, fine, Houris means eyes, but what about the swelling breasts?
Ah, yes. Verse 78.33 of the Quran, the infamous Ka'ib.
And most standard translations, even respected ones like Pickthall or Arbery, render this as maidens with swelling breasts or buxom girls. It seems pretty explicit.
It does on the surface, but Ahmed argues this is a linguistic disaster, a total catastrophic mistranslation driven by preconceived notions.
So walk us through the root. Let's do the surgery.
Okay. The word comes from the three-letter root kab. Does that root sound familiar to you at all?
Kab. It sounds like the Kaaba, the black cube in Mecca.
Exactly. The root kab means cube. It also means ankle bone because the ankle bone protrudes like a hard bump. The core meaning of the root is prominence, glory, or swelling in the sense of emerging or developing, like a plant budding.
Okay. I can see how a dirty mind takes swelling and prominence and immediately jumps to breasts.
Of course. If you're a 7th century guy thinking about heavenly rewards, that's where your mind is probably going to go. But Ahmed uses a brilliant analogy from classical Arabic to debunk this reading. He points to the word ha'id.
Ha'id, which means?
It means menstruating. But, and this is the key in classical Arabic legal terms, if you refer to a menstruating woman, al-haid, you aren't necessarily saying she is actively bleeding right this second.
You're saying she's of an age to do so? She's reached puberty?
Precisely. You're saying she has reached the status of adulthood. She is mature. It's a designation of a life stage, not a description of a continuous biological event.
Okay, I see the parallel.
So Ahmed argues Kawaib works the exact same way. It's not describing a body part. It refers to the age of prominence, the age of vitality, youthfulness, glory, the prime of life.
So it's describing a quality, a state of being, not a physical shape.
Yes. His preferred translation is splendid companions or glorious beings, beings who are in their prime. He actually cites Muhammad Asad, a famous Austrian convert and translator, who completely agrees with this. Asad says that limiting this word to breasts completely overlooks the derivative origin of the word and its broader meaning of prominence.
That is a massive shift. You go from a purely pornographic description of a female chest to a poetic description of a state of being that could apply to anyone.
And just to show how messy and confusing this whole field of translation can get, Ahmed briefly touches on the raisin theory.
Oh, right. I remember this. Christoph Luxemburg.
Yeah. Luxemburg is a German scholar who argued a few decades ago that the word Hur is actually a loan word from Syro-Aramaic, and that it means white raisins or crystal clear grapes.
So the reward in paradise isn't 72 virgins, it's a celestial fruit salad.
Basically, yes, a bowl of very nice raisins. Now, Ahmed completely dismisses this. He has a great line in the book. He just says, Luxemburg is smoking the wrong plant.
Nice.
But he does admit that Luxemburg, while being wrong, has a valid underlying point. The confusion exists because everyone is trying to force the text to fit a preconception. Whether your preconception is virgins or raisins, you're still missing the deeper, more logical meaning of companionship. You're stuck on a literal object.
So if the signal is actually transmitting this message about pure companions and glorious beings, how in the world did we end up with the static? How did the transparent marrow and the eternal erection overwrite the original text?
This brings us to part 3, the echo chamber, or as Ahmed calls it in his book, the virus of ancestral worship.
He goes pretty hard on the psychology of belief here, not just the linguistics.
He really does. He quotes the Quran directly, where it explicitly and repeatedly condemns people who say, "No, we will follow the ways of our ancestors."
It's a recurring theme in the text. The idea that tradition is not inherently truth. Just because your grandfather believed it or a famous scholar from 800 years ago wrote it doesn't automatically make it real.
Ahmed calls it the sheep mentality.
The shepherd's call.
Right. He uses a Quranic analogy. The text compares blind followers to a herd of sheep who hear a shepherd shout. The sheep move. They react to the sound, but they don't understand the meaning behind the sound. They don't know why they are moving. They just react to the noise.
And his point is that intellectual analysis is what separates us from the animals.
Yes. Ahmed argues that if you just follow the static, the traditions, the popular myths, what the mullah says, without ever going back to check the source code yourself, you are functioning at a subhuman level. You're being a sheep.
You are hearing the sound, but you are missing the meaning.
Deaf, dumb, blind, for they do not use their reason. That's the verse he cites again and again. He argues that this blind following creates a systemic vulnerability. It opens a back door in the software of your mind. And that back door allowed these external viruses, these other mythologies, to get in.
Let's talk about those viruses, because Ahmed's big claim is that the 72 virgins concept didn't even start in Arabia. It was imported.
He plays a fascinating game of connect the dots with religious history, and the lines he draws go straight to India and Persia, the great empires that the early Muslims conquered.
He starts with the Apsaras.
Right. In Hindu mythology, specifically in the court of the god Indra, you have the Apsaras. These are celestial nymphs. They are described in the ancient texts, the Vedas, as being beautiful, buxom, with narrow waists. They are called daughters of joy. They are dancers and courtesans for the gods and for heroes who die in battle.
That sounds suspiciously familiar. The warrior gets a celestial courtesan as a reward.
It's the exact same archetype, the reward woman. And then you look at Zoroastrianism, which was the dominant religion of Persia right before Islam arrived. They have a concept called the Dana.
What is the Dana?
The Dana is the embodiment of your conscience and your deeds. If you lived a good life, your conscience meets you at the bridge to the afterlife. It's called the Chinvat Bridge, in the form of a beautiful 15-year-old maiden.
So the idea of my good deeds turning into a hot girl was already in the cultural water supply of the region?
It was literally the pop culture of the time. And Ahmed's theory is that as Islam expanded out of Arabia into Persia and India, these local myths didn't just disappear, they just put on a new coat of paint. They got Islamicized, the Apsara became the Houri, the Dina became the virgin reward, the concepts were smuggled in.
So the static is basically a remix, a cultural mashup.
It's a pagan remix pasted over the monotheistic text, and because the sheep, to use his term, weren't checking the original text, they just accepted the remix as the original song. They didn't have the critical faculty to see the difference.
That is fascinating. It turns the theology into a work of anthropology. It really shows how porous religions actually are, how they absorb the cultures around them.
And it shows how easily sex sells, even in theology. Ahmed bluntly says, no wonder we have rampant sexual desires when we are influenced by inspired behavior. He even links it all the way back to the Bible, to the story of Judah and the temple prostitute in Genesis. Humans have always had a very hard time separating the sacred from the sexual.
So we've deconstructed the static. We've wiped the hard drive of all that noise. We've kicked out the virus of ancestral worship. What is left? What is the signal actually transmitting?
This brings us to the final and most important part of the dive, what Ahmed calls architectural justice.
If paradise isn't about sex, what is it about? What's the actual project?
Ahmed argues we have to start by redefining the word deen. We almost always translate it as religion. But he says that's a narrow Western concept. He says deen means a system of life, a social contract, a divine constitution.
So it's political, it's economic.
It's everything. The Quranic vision, according to Ahmed, isn't about personal piety rituals or growing a beard or wearing a hijab. It's about establishing a just economic order. He focuses on the concept of zakat, the mandatory charity. He sees it as the foundation of a society where everyone's physical needs, food, safety, shelter, dignity, are met for everyone.
So when the Quran talks about goblets of gold and rivers of milk and honey, that's not literal.
He argues they aren't magic tricks from God. They are allegories for a post-scarcity society. a society created by human cooperation under the guidance of divine law. He quotes the verse about the goblets of gold and interprets it as, "When we work together to fulfill the needs of others as well as ourselves, we will create a life where all our physical needs are fully met. The gold is the value we create together."
It's a utopia, but it's a constructed one, not a magical one.
It's a paradise on earth that then extends into the hereafter. And the absolute keystone of this entire architectural project is gender equality.
The colleagues.
Verse 9, verse 71. This is the pivot point for his entire argument. Believing men and believing women are aliyah of one another.
And aliyah is usually translated as friends or protectors.
But Ahmed argues that's too soft. He translates it as colleagues, partners, allies. The text goes on to say they enjoin virtue and forbid vice together as a team.
That implies shared responsibility, shared agency.
Huge agency. In the static, the woman is a passive object to be enjoyed. In the signal, she is an active agent of moral and social change. She is a full partner in building the system. Ahmed says the Quran shames to hell the deep-seated misogyny of the Hadith literature.
And this partnership, this idea of colleagues, extends into the afterlife. Which brings us to what was, for me, the most touching and powerful part of the signal, the reinterpretation of the boys.
Oh, right, the boys of perpetual freshness, the Wulan.
In the static, these figures were often interpreted as young male servants, or in some darker interpretations, as objects of pederasty, the gulam.
Right. The eternally young boy servants pouring wine for the men, another element of the male power fantasy.
But Ahmed looks at the context. The signal in the Quran talks over and over about families being reunited. He cites verse 52.21 specifically, "And those who believed and whose descendants followed them in faith, we will unite them with their descendants."
So who are the boys?
They are the children, the scattered pearls.
Oh.
Just think about the 7th century. High infant mortality, disease, war. Losing a child was a universal, devastating trauma. So the promise isn't that you get a young boy to serve you wine. The promise is that your own children, those scattered pearls that you lost, are returned to you, immortalized in their playfulness and their happiness, forever safe.
That hits different. That's a completely different emotional register.
It's the difference between a harem and a home. The signal promises a family reunion, a restoration of the family unit, perfected and protected from all pain. Ahmed cites another verse, 52.24, "And there will be circulated among them serving boys belonging to them as if they were pearls well protected." He reads, belonging to them as their own children, not property.
It changes the entire emotional frequency of the afterlife. The static is all about isolation and sensation. Me, my palace, my virgins. The signal is about connection, my partner, my children, my community.
Precisely. It turns paradise from a place of taking pleasure, taking wine, taking virgins, to a place of being with family, being in peace, being secure.
So what does this all mean then? We've traveled from transparent bone marrow to family reunions, from sexual stamina to social justice. It's a huge journey.
It's a journey from the animal to the human, from the base instinct to the higher self.
That's the core question that Ahmed is posing, isn't it?
It is. He asks a provocative question that I think we should leave the listener with to really mull over.
Go for it.
If the static, the tradition, the hadith, the centuries of cultural accumulation tells you that your ultimate reward is a sexual fantasy, a fantasy that, let's be honest, perfectly mirrors the desires of a 7th century warlord or maybe just a lonely, powerful man. And the signal, the text itself, when you read it carefully, tells you that your reward is a just society, intellectual companionship, spiritual peace, and being reunited with your loved ones.
The question becomes, which one is actually appealing to the human soul, and which one is just appealing to the animal instinct?
Are you listening to the shepherd, or are you reading the map?
J.R. Ahmed's Beyond the Virgins. It's a lot to process. It's not an easy read, but it's a powerful one.
Indeed. It really challenges us to verify the data we've been running on maybe our whole lives.
Thanks for diving in with us on this one. It was a deep one.
And to you, listening. Keep trying to tune out the static. We'll see you next time.